Hi everyone! So because I've decided to ask some other people to tell their stories around mental health for Mental Health Awareness Week in May 2019, I decided it was time that I told you my story about mental health, because actually I've been blogging about it for a really long time in bits and pieces, and I've touched upon the topic. So you probably have some idea of the things that I've been through, but I've never really started with the origins. So I've never really told that story, mostly because actually it's just too long to tell in a blog post. And so I felt like it was important to take to the video format, and video takes time, and I'm also quite new at video. So anyway, long story short, here I am. I'm ready to tell you my story. Yeah, just to support Mental Health Awareness Week, and as a way to support the other people who have also agreed to share their stories. So, my story with mental health. How did I get here? Why am I talking about it? Why has this become a passion of mine? Wow, so many questions. I'm going to start at the beginning. So, in 2012, holy moly, that is like practically 7 years ago. So in 2012, I started my job at the agency that I used to work for. I was super excited about this new job. I had answered a vacancy. The job description sounded perfect. You all know what that's like. You see it and you're like, yes, this is me. So super excited. And I think the job description was social media manager. So day one, I start my job. I'm being seconded to a client, also super exciting. I get to go to the client's offices. I mean, everything seems super plush, and bearing in mind, I was, I guess, 25. You know, I didn't have much professional experience prior to that, so this was really exciting for me. And so I get to the job, and yeah, I just get thrown in the deep end. As anyone who's worked at agency will know, that's usually how it goes. But I was unprepared for that. Anyway, so I start the job, and very quickly it becomes apparent that there's just way too much work for one person. Basically, I had to community manage. So there were high expectations on the client side. Of course, I knew that there were high expectations on the agency side, that I had been put into this role, and there was I felt like there was a lot resting upon my shoulders in terms of success of this client and this project. And of course, being new at my job, I felt like I had to prove myself as well. You know, who doesn't feel that way in a new job? So I was super keen to show that, you know, I could do this. I was up for a challenge, and that even though I didn't necessarily know what I was doing, I was gonna, you know, I was gonna kill it. I was gonna be really, really good. So there's all that to take into account, and then couple that with the fact that I'm a perfectionist. So of course, and I'm also very invested, so I care about a job well done. So I think all of those factors together, looking back, it's just a recipe for disaster, let's be honest. I think that I had way too high expectations of myself. I really wanted to push myself. I wanted to show that I was capable and independent, and you know, I didn't want to seem like, I guess I was gonna say crybaby, which is a really derogatory term. I think I just didn't want to seem needy, you know. I felt like I'd been hired into this role as a manager, and I just had to kind of figure it out for myself. So it was really difficult to ask for help, and I think I just didn't. I just carried on and did everything that I could, and felt like it was my responsibility to figure it out. And to be honest, there wasn't really that many layers like after me and senior management in the agency. So even if I had asked for help, I honestly don't know who I would have asked, because I really didn't feel like the senior management and the senior leaders, who were like, I don't know, at least 2 or 3 ranks above me, were the people who would be able to get into the weeds and help me out. So yeah, so all of that was a struggle. And then 3 months in, so this brand had like regular product launches. So 3 months in, there was a product launch, and we had to do a campaign around it, and I think we had to do a social media competition. So I was already working really hard. I mean, I was already starting, very early in the morning, and I was going home late at night. I was already pushing myself in terms of hours. And I remember that after this competition, or during this competition actually, the client sat us down and was like, this is not working out, we need to turn it around. Like, everything seemed really dramatic. It didn't seem to me like the competition wasn't going well, but for him, like, clearly something wasn't working out. It was really dramatic, and we kind of had to like drop everything, sit down, solve the problem, and turn it around and like make it happen. I think my recollection of that is that I felt like people were expecting results from us, so that people were looking at us, and there were expectations and from us to succeed as a team. And I also remember that we were working with a partner like dev agency, and they were under a lot of pressure, and we were like just putting them under pressure to deliver really quickly, and that was just a normal thing. So of course, when you see that, you yourself representing an agency, you think, oh shit, I really have to kind of up my game. And on top of that, everybody at that company was working pretty long hours and just driving themselves into the ground. So yeah, the company culture was very unhealthy. But I think even more so for me as like a young, new joiner, then you see people, you see these behaviors and you want to emulate them because you think like that's what you have to do to be successful. So 3 months into this job and this competition around the new product launch, and I pretty much already had my first burnout. My boyfriend at the time said to me, like, I remember, because I was really tired, obviously, because I was working like crazy, so it was very important to me to get to bed early. And I remember that one night I hadn't been able to get to bed early, and I started crying. I was crying, and then my boyfriend looked at me and he's like, Emma, something is seriously wrong with you. Like, no one cries because they can't go to bed early. And I was like, shit, it really hit me. I was like, yeah, something is kind of wrong with me. And yeah, I think that was my first encounter with burnout. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that was it. All I know was that I was incredibly overwhelmed, and I was crying because I hadn't gone to bed early enough. So clearly something wasn't right. I was so stressed, and my colleagues still made fun of me till the very end of my time at the agency. I was so stressed out that I never had time to talk to anyone. I would come back to the agency once a week. I would walk into that office like a ball of nerves. I would just work, and I never had time to like stop for a coffee or chat to anyone. Like, just the thought of taking a break absolutely freaked me out. I just could not handle it. Every now and then, like, I was able to take a breather, or someone would tell me like, it's okay, you can take a break, like nothing's gonna fall apart. So every now and then I could manage, but it was super stressful. And I would come in and I would tell them like, I can't do it, I have too much work. I remember them telling me actually to just tell my manager to ask for help. And I did to some extent. I raised the problem. I was like, I have too much work, I can't manage this, like I need help. But their answer was for me to kind of calculate the number of hours that I was spending on each project. And like, at this point you're kind of thinking, dude, I barely have time to do my job, let alone sit down and create a spreadsheet for you in which I'm like calculating the hours that I'm spending on each task. That's, come to think of it now, looking back, I mean, that is like really unhelpful. And anyway, you should just be able to take someone's word for it when they tell you that they're freaking out. Needless to say, like, I feel like I probably didn't look very good. Like, I probably looked really stressed. And my colleagues who made fun of me for like not having time to talk to them in the beginning, I'm pretty sure they could testify to the fact that, yeah, I didn't look like I was having a good time or an easy time. Anyway, so I asked for help, didn't work out. And then I think towards December of that year, so 6 months into my job, finally they assigned someone to help me on the job. And I think that was because the client themselves had realized that it was Christmas time. Christmas time is a really busy period for B2C. Of course, they also had more product launches. So it was sort of like, you know, there was just no way I was going to be able to manage the incoming volume of customer service requests, let alone everything else. But this is really the start of my like whole mental health issues. So after that, yeah, I think I had another burnout or breakdown. I don't really know, you know, like I wrote a blog post about the end of year breakdown. For sure, by the time I reached Christmas, I was absolutely dead. I remember spending a lot of time working on a report that didn't work and didn't fit the needs, and I just remember crying because the client called me on a Friday evening to tell me that he wasn't happy with it. I just remember crying and being like, I can't deal with this. I remember that very early on as well in the process, I felt very under pressure, and I was observing, of course, these other behaviors in agency as well, that like client work takes the priority. So I remember that even early on, I was supposed to go on a weekend away with some friends, and I cancelled and I just worked, which again, in hindsight, is so stupid, but I really didn't know, and I thought that was what you were supposed to do. So I guess a lot of this learning in this story is also about boundaries. So anyway, so by the time I reached Christmas, I was completely run down. I don't know if I was burnt out, but I was certainly run down. And then after that, in February, I remember going away on vacation with my boyfriend at the time, and being able to take a break and just feeling really, really run down. Again, I don't know if I had burnt out, but I was certainly like really exhausted. Definitely needed the holiday. Remember during the holiday, like always asking myself these hard questions, like why am I doing this? Why am I still here? Like, I did complain a lot as well, you know, and credit to my ex-boyfriend for that. Like he just listened to me complain a lot about the situation, about how bad it was, about the, you know, the relationship with the client, about all sorts of things. So it was really tough. Nevertheless, went back into it, and I mean, I can't even remember, but that was not a happy time for me. I basically spent a year and a half in that role with that client on that assignment, and the entire year and a half, and this is, I guess, the build-up of the story, I basically didn't sleep. And was suffering from really bad anxiety, but I didn't know what it was. And this manifested in many different ways. Basically, what happened was, as I said, I was working a lot. I'd wake up, I guess, around 6 o'clock or 6:30. I would get on a train to commute. And on the train already, I was opening my emails and I was checking my emails. This was like 7 a.m. And just switching on the phone, like, would give me heart palpitations. Like my heart would be pounding, and I would be like terrified to switch it on, because I knew that so many emails would come in through the night, and like, you know, I was always scared, is there going to be negative feedback? Like, what's going to happen? Yeah, so that in itself, switching on the phone, terrified me. It gave me anxiety. I didn't know what it was, but that was what it was. Got to work, of course, lived in constant fear of making a mistake, which in itself is really not healthy. I think, like, when it comes to how you work and delivering work, like if you have a fear, I think it generates anxiety. Not to mention, like I said before, like all the pressure and all that stuff. So that was contributing to the anxiety. I would work pretty late, and then when I came home, I would continue checking my emails really late. Again, looking back, really stupid. But this was what I was seeing other people do, and this is what I thought was normal. Like for me, this was an accepted practice. That's just what we do in agency. And so yeah, so I was checking my emails till really late. Of course, I was coming home, I was telling my ex-boyfriend everything that had happened to me throughout the day. So I was reliving the entire thing again, re-feeling all the emotions, like getting worked up, getting angry, whatever. So that definitely wasn't helping my mental state. It wasn't helping me to rest. By the time I would get to bed, I would lie there and all these thoughts were going through my head. It could be, you know, like the to-do list for tomorrow. Most of the time I was extremely freaked out about all the work I had to do. So definitely the to-do list was top of mind. I have to do this, have to do that, have to wake up early, have to get this done. How am I going to get this done? You know, like constant. But also thinking about all the problems and the difficulties, like the relationship difficulties that I was having with clients or colleagues or whatever, you know, that was also really present on my mind. So often I couldn't fall asleep. I suffered from insomnia. If I did sleep, of course, I was only sleeping, I don't know, like 4, 5, 6, I don't know, okay, 6 hours a night. Definitely not enough. And and when I wasn't sleeping, which was quite common, I suppose, I would suffer from insomnia, where I couldn't fall asleep till 2, 3, 4 a.m. And you see the time passing by and you know you have to wake up. But again, I was so committed to my job that I would just get up and go to work, you know, like for me it was kind of just, I wouldn't say normal, but it was just like, well, what else am I going to do? You know, I can't stay home, I can't give up. It's not an excuse, like, you know, I just kind of got into that mentality. So it was really bad for my health, because of course, on weekends I was absolutely exhausted. I had no energy to do anything, and I would just like sleep. And of course, you can't catch up on lost sleep. Sadly, I'm never going to get that sleep back. So I think, you know, the effects on my mental health of that were many. Of course, starting with the anxiety was causing the insomnia, which I really had no idea. By the end of it, like close to when I finished that assignment, I was really close to going to see the doctor and just saying to him, I can't sleep, I need help, because I had reached such an extreme point of fatigue and like inability to sleep that I just didn't know what to do anymore. And I was like, I'm desperate and I'm ready to like get medication, even though I'm against that. But I was just, I just didn't know what else to do. I was running out of options. So that was one problem. But of course, you know, it's all like a vicious circle. So the more you lack sleep, the more it feeds your anxiety, because you don't have the physical strength or the mental strength to deal with the shit that gets thrown at you throughout the day. So, you know, I would come to work, I'd probably be really exhausted, and any small thing could happen that would set off another wave of anxiety, or, you know, that would just trigger all the emotions. Of course, because I was so exhausted, I also wasn't taking care of my health. I wasn't eating properly. You know, I would come home and I would just feel too lazy. So I had bad health, I don't know, bad food hygiene, however you want to call it. I just wasn't paying attention. That in turn makes you feel bad about yourself physically, because you can see that you're gaining weight or whatever, you know, you don't like how you look. So that affects your confidence, your self-confidence. So it's just this huge vicious circle. I was so exhausted that I didn't want to go out anymore. I wasn't really doing any of the activities that I enjoyed, which again, like, my activities bring me so much joy, but I just gave up on them. You know, I was just too tired, I couldn't do it. So that also was bringing in a vicious circle. And yeah, I mean, I think that the lack of confidence was really huge, and it wasn't just body confidence with regards to not eating properly. It was self-confidence in who I was and my ability to do my job. And I think that I had reached a point where I had pretty much lost all self-confidence. That sounds a bit extreme, but definitely I was not in a good place. Like, I was not able to fight for myself or stand up for myself. I wasn't able to make myself heard. I wasn't able to advocate for myself. And I would just sit there and let things happen, you know, and kind of just watch this huge mess, and feel unable to do anything about it. So, you know, putting all of that together was just this really huge, like, weight, this big thing that was happening to me and affecting my mental health and my happiness. You know, I remember, as I'm telling this story, like, I remember coming home and just lying in the dark on the sofa and crying, because I felt so shit. And that was all I wanted to do. I just wanted to curl up in a ball and cry. I cried multiple times throughout this whole process for many different reasons. You know, I think also the lack of sleep just affects your ability to deal with your emotions. And I've written about this, and I think that for sure there were times when I was just so much more emotional and I would get so much more upset about things. And because I hadn't been sleeping properly and I had no self-confidence, then it would just push me over the edge. So yeah, that was a really sort of rough start for me. And that was my first encounter with mental health at work, or, you know, having a mental health issue essentially brought on by my job, and that then affected me in my job. That was really my first experience of that. And like I said, whilst I was in it, I had no idea what was happening to me. All I knew was I was like extremely unhappy and stressed out, and that it was affecting my relationship as well. But I really didn't know. And it was only when I changed assignments, so I was offered another assignment that I accepted, and I'm so glad that I did and that assignment came along, because it really saved me. I was able to change roles, like not roles, but like assignments. And I think 1 week into that, I was sleeping again. And 1 week after, people were already telling me that I looked so much better and so much healthier. And it was only afterwards, when I started to feel better, that I started to understand what it was that had happened to me. That I was able to put a name to it, that I was able to research it, understand it. And I also met a colleague with whom I was able to have really great conversations around mental health. And I think that this person really also helped open my eyes to what had happened to me. And that's when I started realizing what I had been through. And I think that from then on, I had a lot more awareness. It changed how I wanted to approach my work-life balance. And I'll talk more about that in another video. But it certainly helped me process what I had been going through and start to come to terms with mental health. So that was a really, really long story. Yeah, there was a lot to cover, but I think it was important for me to start there. So if you've watched until the end, thank you so much. But either way, thank you for listening. This is just the beginning. I want to do more videos where I tell more stories of what I've been through in terms of mental health, and just explain all of this to you guys on videos so that you don't have to read it. Because imagine if you had just read the story, it probably would have taken you 3 hours. So 3 hours of reading versus 25 minutes of video, I'd say the video is better. So yeah, stay tuned, watch this space, and thanks again. Bye.